We now know 64 people on the plane, 4 of those crew members, 60 passengers.
Passenger jet originating here from Wichita, Kansas, crashed on approach to Reagan National, colliding with a military helicopter not far from the runway, but debris falling into the Potomac. That's where I think we want to start. If we could cue up that video captured on webcam of the collision itself, and we will walk you through that collision, and then we're going to walk you through, of course, any information we have, and we are awaiting that update from Wichita officials. And as I'm looking at our
there's
monitor,
Mayor Lily Wu.
Yeah, Mayor Lily Wu. And let's go ahead and stick with this here until they take the podium. The city manager, Bob Layton, there as well. This at Eisenhower Airport, hoping to get some answers here. If you have loved ones, that they'll have somewhere,
some sort of resource.
Yeah, somewhere to direct you. So let's keep that shot up as we walk people through again what we know. This was Flight 5342, an American Airlines regional jet inbound to D.C. on a direct flight here from Wichita. About 60 people on board with 4 crew members. Yeah, with about 4 crew members on board, and then of course the military members on that Black Hawk helicopter.
Right. We don't know an exact number for the helicopter at this point.
We don't.
Correct?
We've heard reports of possibly 3 military personnel on that chopper. We know from air traffic control that from audio that they were aware of both aircraft, that they were in communication. And somehow this tragedy struck on a clear night there in D.C. and again, what is likely one of the worst aviation disasters we've seen here in the U.S.
And what we keep saying, some of the most secure airspace that you could imagine.
As we wait for that news conference to happen, and well, here's Wichita Mayor Lily Wu approaching reporters there. Let's go ahead and listen in.
First, let me start off with, we will only release information that is confirmed. American Airlines did give me a call today informing me of the incident that happened with one of our Wichita to Washington, D.C. flights. We are waiting for further information that is confirmed. At this time, as a council, we really want to ask each and every Wichitan, Kansan, and American to pray for everyone involved in this incident, whether involved in the incident in DC or those who are helping with the rescue efforts. I do know that American Airlines continues to tell us that the rescue efforts are ongoing. And as a council, again, our thoughts, our prayers are with everyone. And we just ask that everyone wait for confirmed information before they share.
Mayor, have you spoken with any family members?
No, I have not.
Is there a plan for family?
Yeah, thank you for that question. By the way, I'm Jesse Romo. I'm Director of Airports for Wichita Airport Authority. I wish I had additional information, but additional official information will come directly from either the airline or from NTSB as this continues. We have been asked that question of what do friends and family do that want additional information. We do have an incident family support team that we've activated. So we have a lot of volunteers that come in to help out in a situation like this that will be here in the terminal if they do want to come to this point. But we also encourage them to stay home and stay in contact with the airline, and they'll be getting an official word directly as well.
What does that people come here already?
The team helps out with getting the information funneled and channeled to them. And we also have like a chaplain that volunteers to come in to provide support as well. I'm sorry, your question?
You've had family members or people that know people on this flight come here already?
I believe we have. I believe we have. And the Incident Family Support Team is managed by our Airport Police and Fire Department, and so those officers have already been coordinating the assistance.
Are they around here right now?
Not that I can tell you where they're at. I can't point to them.
Is there any phone number that families at home could call?
We don't have any phone numbers for them to call, but I know that American Airlines on their website has contact information that they're supposed to reach out through.
How soon were you made aware of this incident after it happened, you know?
I couldn't tell. I don't have the exact time of when the incident occurred, but we were notified fairly shortly thereafter.
Can you talk about the human element of how this makes you guys feel here at the airport tonight?
Well, obviously our thoughts and prayers go out to the family and to everyone. We appreciate everybody who flies and supports Eisenhower National Airport, and it just breaks our heart to hear something like this occur. And so it's devastating for everyone.
This route is a fairly new route, the direct flight to D.C., correct?
And that's correct. The direct flights to DCA started a year ago, so January 8th of last year. And I wish I had more information, but if we have additional, we will be reaching out to everyone. So.
And will that be communicated via email or here, or what's the plan?
We'll do our best to get you the information as soon as we can. So whatever's appropriate for us, whichever medium. I wish I could tell you exactly or schedule time to come in, but that information is going to trickle to us. So I don't know yet, but we will share as much and as soon as possible.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, the briefing there from Wichita Mayor Lily Wu and the Director of Airports there in Wichita. If we could go live back to D.C. Hoping to get some answers for families. They are being directed to contact American Airlines to not go to the airport.
They say they have that number on American Airlines website, and they were encouraging families to stay home.
We do have another number for you, and again, that's the office of Ron Estes staffing his lines tonight, 202-225-6216. Hopefully with his ability to directly contact the FAA or local authorities there, at least could take your questions to them. But again, that's from Representative Ron Estes tonight.
And if you're just joining us, we just heard from Mayor Wu and also Jessie Romo with the Eisenhower National Airport. She was just saying that she did hear from American Airlines earlier today about this incident. And right now they're just praying and waiting for confirmed information before they release anything else.
Yeah, they have deployed, they call it their incident support team there to, and that includes a chaplain to work with family members, some of whom. Okay, let's take a new look at some video here, I believe, of some of the search and rescue efforts there in the Potomac. We are getting reports that there are some possible survivors of this crash. So as we come in here on the top of the hour, there is something hopeful to report, considering the tragedy that we witnessed through that video showing the collision of both of these aircraft.
That's a prayer from everyone tonight.
All right, we do have the number now for American Airlines. This, of course, please reserve it for family. They have set this up, 1-800-679-8215. That will take you to American Airlines, and that's where the city of Wichita is pointing any loved ones who may have someone aboard that plane to search for answers. Again, roughly 60 people on board the plane. Hopefully the reports hold true, that rescuers were able to rescue at least some people of the 60 or so people. Okay, we do have an interview with the Inspector General, this coming from CNN. Let's go ahead and take that.
Can you just walk us through, obviously, as Pete was noting, we have not seen a passenger plane crash in the United States in quite some time. Tell us what you're seeing in these images and what your questions are right now.
Well, and I just flew into Washington, D.C. myself not 2 hours ago. There was some not, the winds that would shut the airport, but there was some pretty significant wind. And, of course, also local coverage in D.C. and feeds from D.C. There was shown not long ago of actual footage of the midair, and there was quite an explosion in the air. and then the response at the airport is massive. So.
All right, you're watching coverage here, live breaking coverage of this mid-air collision and crash at Reagan National Airport from this American Airlines Flight 5342 en route from Wichita on approach here at Reagan National in D.C. when it collided midair with a U.S. military Black Hawk helicopter. To get you up to speed here, just after 11 o'clock Eastern time, this crash happened just before 9 o'clock Eastern time, so about 2 hours ago. As far as the total number of people involved, we know 67 people total were involved between these two aircraft. According to American Airlines, there were 60 passengers on board the jet and 4 crew members on board the Black Hawk, a crew of 3. No senior Army officials, according to the Department of Defense, were on board the helicopter, but a crew of 3 soldiers on board the Black Hawk and 64 total on board the plane. Again, the plane making its approach to Reagan National Airport. We know the control tower was aware of both aircraft. There was some chatter with the crew of the helicopter, with the air traffic controllers asking the helicopter if they saw the airplane, the jet, the American Airlines regional jet. The Bombardier CRJ 700 is that aircraft. What we don't know, are there any survivors? You heard our crew in Wichita saying unconfirmed reports of potential survivors. There is nothing official at all about any possible survivors. We know the water temperature in the Potomac River is about 35 degrees. It only takes about 20 minutes for hypothermia to set in if someone is submerged in that water. We know that dozens of divers are in the Potomac River right now as we speak, actively trying to reach those passengers. There was a report that a significant portion of the jet was submerged in the Potomac underneath the water, and that's why the divers are there trying to reach folks that were on board this plane. Obviously, your heart goes out to everyone in Wichita and anywhere around the country who may have a family or friend on board this aircraft, or a family member of those soldiers on board the Black Hawk, as they wait for any sort of answers as to what happened to anyone on board. Are there any potential survivors? That is a major question still tonight. We know at Wichita's airport, there's an incident family support team that's been dispatched, made up of volunteers and a chaplain. The airport administrator there in Wichita said some family members had already shown up at the Wichita airport there looking for answers, waiting for answers. The airport spokesman asking family members to stay home and to wait for official information from the airline. As far as the government response, we know that President Trump has been fully briefed on this incident and said to offer his prayers for the souls on board the plane. We know that, there was just a new Secretary of Transportation Secretary sworn in today, Sean Duffy, sworn in today, who will now have to address this crash and deal with the aftermath here. Obviously, the NTSB, the FAA investigating this as well, but there are still very many questions in the early hours since this crash happened on the Potomac River, in very busy airspace, but also very well protected and very tightly controlled airspace over the nation's capital, some of the tightest airspace in the world. It is very heavily trafficked. There are lots of planes, constant stream of planes in and out. There have been several close calls in recent years as well that have raised eyebrows, specifically here at Reagan National Airport. Each one gets an investigation, gets a report done about it, but there have been some eyebrow-raising close calls, and tonight a crash. We know that Reagan Airport has shut down for the night. There are no longer any flights going in and out. There have not been since this crash happened. The flights have been diverted either to BWI, Baltimore-Washington International Airport in Baltimore, and also Dulles International Airport as well, about 40 minutes outside of D.C. So Dulles and BWI taking on the passengers and the flights set to come in and out of Reagan National as that airport is closed for the night. Passengers being taken away from the airport after this mid-air plane collision. Again, 64 passengers and crew not just passengers, but passengers and crew. 60 passengers, 4 crew on board the American Airlines flight, and 3 soldiers, U.S. soldiers on this military Black Hawk helicopter. No senior defense officials that we're told, no VIPs on board the Black Hawk, which is common, that VIPs are shuttled around the DMV area, but none on board tonight. We don't know what the helicopter was doing at the time, although we are just getting word that this aircraft, the helicopter, was out of Fort Belvoir in Virginia. That is according to the Army, saying that this helicopter, the Black Hawk, was out of Fort Belvoir in Virginia. They released a statement there. So we're going to continue watching for updates here, listening for updates. For now, we are going to take you back to our newsroom in Wichita, Kansas. KWCH is our station there. Obviously, this flight originated out of Wichita, so there are a lot of concerned people in Kansas tonight. Let's return to their coverage as they also monitor this disaster.
That so many Washingtonians do. I've driven that many times myself. And those planes, as you said, it's extremely normal to see tons and tons of aircraft landing all the time. So you see this happening. You see the sparks flying. What happened next? What did you do next?
So I was turning my head to the left and I was driving, right? So I looked at this for, it couldn't have been more than 2 seconds, and then I needed to look back at the road. And then I looked back again. I wondered if I was going to see an explosion, a crash into the ground. I was trying to decide if I should call 911. This was all happening very, very quickly. So I wasn't thinking entirely rationally. But I turned back and I didn't see anything. I didn't see a plane hit the ground. I didn't see flames or an explosion or smoke. I didn't see emergency lights. It was so brief what I saw that I actually wondered for a moment if I had hallucinated it in some way. And I kept driving, and just a few seconds later, I was too far along to be able to turn my head back and see the airport anymore. So I looped back around. I U-turned on the highway to go back and see if I could see anything. And when I turned back north and drove by the same point, I still didn't see anything. No flames, no crash, no nothing.
All right, Ari Schulman, thank you very much for joining us. And honestly, I'm so sorry that you actually witnessed this happen. I want to go now to Ari Schulman. He is a witness to this aircraft crash. Ari, thanks for joining us. First of all, tell us, where were you when you...
So we just heard from some more witnesses tonight. We also heard from city officials earlier today.
And on that witness, one thing before we get to Cale here, he said he saw that the passenger plane try to bank.
And he said it was in an angle it shouldn't be banking.
At the last minute. And the video we have, it's too dark, it's too far away. So that would be an interesting fact that we could pass along from that witness.
And he also said he didn't see the helicopter when all that happened.
Right.
Well, right now we do want to go back out to Cale Chapman. He's at Eisenhower National Airport. He just heard a briefing from Wichita Mayor Lily Wu. Cale, what can you tell us right now?
Mike, Rachel, Eisenhower Airport has emptied out. Wichita Police, Airport Security, and a few Wichita City Council members are here on scene. But Wichita City Mayor Lily Wu and the director of Eisenhower Airport are asking that friends and family of anyone that was on this flight stay home. The numbers that you can call, there's the American Airlines number as well as Representative Ron Estes' number. You can see there. Call those 2 numbers to get information. They are again asking that friends and family do not come to the airport and that they stay home. Mike, Rachel.
Yeah, what's going on? As affiliates have set up there, we're told that we are expecting a briefing possibly from the FAA or authorities there on the ground there in D.C. So hopefully we'll start getting some information, because the big question tonight, if the reports hold true that there are possible survivors,
correct,
that we could learn that, and we could at least pass that along tonight.
We could pass that along to families, and also many questions about how this could happen. That airspace very secure, not too far from the White House at the Reagan National Airport. So hopefully we get that briefing soon, but in the meantime, we're going to be keeping an eye on that to see if anyone starts talking.
All right, let's go over to meteorologist Ross Jansen, not only walking us through the weather there, but also a look at this video and what we're seeing here as this crash happens. Ross?
Yeah, Mike and Rachel, this plane right here, the one that's in the foreground. east. Again, the plane that's in the foreground headed north, and we know, according to flight radar, that the plane, as it was getting ready to approach, was less than 500 feet off the ground. So it didn't take very long for the debris, obviously, to make it into the Potomac. And the Potomac is about 10 to 20 feet deep until you get right up close to the runway, right up close to the coast, and then it's actually a lot deeper there. So we don't know exactly where the crash, where the debris field is probably going to end up. It could be scattered over a large area of the Potomac, but the water temperatures being about 35 to 36 degrees, the human body could only sustain, life in that kind of water for about 30 to maybe 45 minutes before hypothermia begins to set in. So this will more than likely turn into a recovery mission before too long. Go back over to the graphics and just show you again, as we've been periodically coming back to this, a map of the airport, because there's 3 different runways there at Reagan. The longest one is oriented mostly north to south, and the runway that they were approaching is oriented northwest to southeast, and the crash again happening just off the edge of this runway that's painted in white. The weather appears to have nothing to do with the crash tonight. They were under a clear sky. Just check the satellite, a few minutes ago, and that entire area was in a clear sky. The winds have been pretty gusty, but anybody that's familiar with aviation would recognize those numbers as not being problematic for aircraft. Airplanes are meant to sustain some really strong winds, so a gust of 29 to 30 really shouldn't have much impact, but we'll learn more as they continue to do their rescue and recovery efforts. But again, 3 runways. We've highlighted 2 of them. The longest one in yellow, that one over a mile long. The one that's a little bit shorter than a mile is in white, and that's the one that they were trying to approach. I did get an email from a viewer wanting to know if we knew how many passengers or how many people were on board the helicopter. I don't think that information is available tonight. Obviously, just a very fluid situation, learning more by the minute. But that's the layout of Reagan National there, and the crash just off the edge of that runway that's painted in white. Mike and Rachel.
All right, Ross, thank you. Let's go back live there to DC, getting information from an aviation expert. This is from Seth Miller, founder and editor-in-chief of PAX X Aero, saying they're still waiting to see the recovery, how it progresses. At this point, he's pointing to the same reports of varying numbers of possible survivors, which he said, considering what we witnessed, would be amazing, but varying reports of 4 to 12 survivors. But again, I need to reiterate that is not confirmed. Those are just different reports coming from that area, but at least giving us some hope that there are survivors. Again, this aviation expert saying he listened to air traffic control conversations and there was nothing indicating a problem anywhere along the way until multiple different controllers saw the explosion. So not a lot of warning. He said at this point it appears that American, again confirming 64 souls on board, 60 passengers, 2 pilots, 2 flight attendants. And he's asked a lot about, Rachel, how common is it to have helicopters in that area? And he said for a variety of reasons, because it is DC, right, that there are a lot of helicopters in that area, and they're very versed in operating in those tight airspaces. He points out there would not have been direct communication between the helicopter and plane. In a space like that, it is communication from the tower. And we do know the tower had made communication, listening to the audio, asking if they had seen that, but that was the only indication of any problem.
What he did point out was it was unclear about how this all got into this position, but he did say it is relatively common to see helicopters, as you mentioned, operating all over and around the D.C. area because of the base that's nearby. And that is the question tonight, is we know crashes happen for varying reasons, often weather-related, of course terrorism-related, but on a clear night, to have a military helicopter collide with a passenger jet is very unusual, and again, likely one of the worst disasters we've seen here in the U.S. in quite some time. And we keep talking about rescue efforts and hypothermia and how quick these rescuers have to act. Now we're hearing from the U.S. Coast Guard. They say they're deploying every available resource toward rescue efforts. That's from the Homeland Security Secretary. Just anything to try and help these people that were on board. Complicating this matter is rescuing people in these cold, dark waters. We do know that CNN reporting part of the plane, you could see it was submerged and that divers were deployed.
trying to get to the victims as quickly as possible because time is not on their side tonight in those cold waters. And unfortunately, just before landing, again, the plane was just over 400 feet above the ground when this collision happened. If you believe you have a loved one, those numbers are on your screen. If you believe you have a loved one connected to this, we got an update at the top of the hour. Okay, we do have, I'll get through this real quick, and we do have an aviation expert online. But again, if you have a loved one, Wichita